All right, strap in because today we're diving headfirst into a topic that'll really warp your perception of, well, reality as we know it. We're going deep on quantum physics, the very fabric of the universe, and grappling with that age-old question, does God exist?
A question that feels almost impossible to answer right. But that's what makes Stephen Priest's research paper, Quantum Physics and the Existence of God, so fascinating. It takes on some of the most mind-boggling concepts in physics and asks whether they might point to something beyond the material world.
And it all starts with this idea that the universe is far weirder than, our everyday experience would suggest. I mean, most of us get thrown by those optical illusions where the lines look wonky, but here we're talking about a reality where particles don't even have a defined location until they're observed. How does that even work?
It's one of the biggest head-scratchers in quantum mechanics, for sure. Imagine a video game character that exists in multiple possible states until you, the player, interact with them and force a choice. It's kind of like that at the quantum level. This act of observation, of measuring a particle's properties, seems to be what collapses its wave function and locks it into a definite state.
Okay, hold on. Let's unpack that a bit. Wave function. It sounds like something out of like a sci-fi flick.
Basically, it's a mathematical way of describing a particle state.
Yeah.
But instead of a fixed location like we're used to, a particle in the quantum realm is more like a smear of probabilities, a wave of possibilities. It's only when we observe it that this wave seems to collapse into a single point, as if our consciousness plays a part in shaping reality itself.
See, this is where things get truly mind-bending. Imagine if your ability to perceive reality isn't just a human thing, but a fundamental part of how the universe itself operates.
And that's exactly the argument Priest's paper explores. He digs into several interpretations of quantum mechanics, each with its own take on this strange link between consciousness and reality.
Yeah.
Take, for example, the Copenhagen interpretation.
The Copenhagen interpretation, yeah, always had a kind of mysterious ring to it.
Right. It's the most widely accepted interpretation, but also one of the most perplexing. It basically says that before we observe a quantum system, it exists in a superposition, this blurry state of multiple possibilities all at once. It's our observation that collapses it and forces the system to choose a definite outcome.
So are we saying that, like, if a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to hear it, it doesn't actually make a sound? Because that seems a little too zen, even for me.
Not quite that literal, but you've hit on the core mystery here. The Copenhagen interpretation suggests that consciousness, the act of observing, of being aware, might be fundamental to how reality itself takes shape.
Okay, so if our minds aren't already blown at this point, let's toss another log on the fire. Because then we get into things like the many worlds interpretation, which takes this whole consciousness thing to a whole other level.
Oh, absolutely. The many worlds interpretation is a wild ride, for sure. It proposes that every time there's a quantum event with multiple possible outcomes, all those outcomes actually happen, but each in a separate branching universe.
So, now picture this. Every quantum event causing reality to split, creating endless parallel universes. What does that mean for free will? What does that mean for your choices?
Enough to make your head spin.
Right.
Right. But even in this multiverse of endless possibilities, there's still this underlying need for a consciousness to experience each branch. It has to be our consciousness that defines our universe out of the infinity of others.
So we've got these parallel universes, each with its own version of us, living out every possible choice. It's like cosmic choose-your-own-adventure on a scale that's almost impossible to grasp. But wait, it gets even weirder.
Speaking of mind-bending possibilities, how about the idea that the universe is made of information? That takes us even further down the rabbit hole. Priest's paper also dives into quantum information theory, the it from bit idea.
Right. That one always makes me think of those sci-fi movies where they figure out the universe is just a simulation running on some super advanced computer program.
It's a surprisingly good analogy, actually. Quantum information theory basically proposes that the most fundamental building blocks of reality aren't physical particles, but bits of information, just like the ones and zeros in your computer. And you know how your computer needs software, like a mind, to organize and interpret those bits. Well, the universe might need a kind of cosmic mind to make sense of all this quantum information.
Okay, so we're talking about a universe where consciousness might be fundamental, where reality branches off with every quantum event, and where the very fabric of existence might be information processed by some kind of cosmic mind. This is a lot to process, even for a deep dive.
It definitely challenges our conventional view of the universe, that's for sure. But here's where things get really interesting, where the rubber meets the road in terms of your initial question. Does any of this point toward the existence of God?
Because it's one thing to talk about a cosmic mind in this abstract quantum physics kind of way, but it's a whole other thing to connect that to the God, with a capital G, the God of, say, religious belief.
Exactly. And Priest's paper doesn't shy away from that. He lays out a very specific definition of God, drawing on classical theism. He's talking about a God who is unique, infinitely powerful, all-knowing, benevolent, necessary, omnipresent, atemporal, the ground of everything, a person, and the creator and sustainer of the universe.
Wow, that's a pretty comprehensive definition. It's not just some vague higher power, it's the God, the one people have been wrestling with for millennia.
Precisely. And Priest's argument is that this quantum consciousness we've been discussing, this fundamental aspect of reality that seems necessary for the universe to even exist, might actually fit that definition surprisingly well.
Okay, I'm intrigued, but help me connect the dots here. How do we go from collapsing wave functions and quantum information to attributes like omnipresence and a temporality? Those seem like totally different concepts.
Let's start with omnipresence. If this quantum consciousness is really fundamental to how reality works, wouldn't that suggest it's present everywhere, at all times? Every quantum event, from the tiniest subatomic interaction to the largest cosmic structure, would rely on it.
So it's not just that this consciousness is everywhere in the sense that it fills the universe, but that it's the very precondition for there being a universe at all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this ties into the idea of a temporality as well. If this quantum consciousness is fundamental to the fabric of reality, it might exist outside of time as we experience it. Think of it like this. We humans are stuck in the flow of time, moving from past to present to future. But this consciousness might be experiencing all of time simultaneously, a vast, eternal now.
That's a truly mind-blowing concept. It's like those moments when you're so engrossed in something, so focused, that you completely lose track of time, like a glimpse into a timeless state of being.
And this timeless aspect connects to another attribute Priest highlights, actus purus, often translated as pure actuality.
Mm.
It's this idea that unlike us, who exist in a constant state of becoming always changing, this quantum consciousness is pure being, complete in itself, is not bound by the limitations of time or change.
So we're not talking about just a really smart, powerful being. We're talking about something that exists on an entirely different plane of reality, something that transcends our very understanding of time and space.
It's a radical concept, but then again, so is quantum physics. And this is where the paper starts to make some really fascinating connections between these mind-bending scientific ideas and the profound philosophical and theological questions humans have been grappling with for centuries.
Like the question of why there's something rather than nothing, why this universe exists at all, with its precise laws of physics that allow for stars, planets, and even life itself.
Precisely. This brings us to the idea of a universe designed for us, a concept that has intrigued physicists and philosophers alike.
A universe designed just for us. It's an idea that's been debated for ages, but it takes on a whole new meaning when we're talking about quantum consciousness and the very nature of reality itself.
It really does. Priest brings up the work of philosopher John Leslie, who had this fascinating thought experiment. What if, Leslie asked, the very fact that the universe exists at all is because it's good? What if existence itself is inherently preferable to non-existence, and this preference, this drive towards goodness, is woven into the very fabric of reality?
So it's not just that our universe happens to have the perfect conditions for life, but that those life-friendly conditions are a result of the universe being inherently biased towards, well, goodness.
That's the radical idea Leslie's putting forward. And if we connect that back to this concept of a quantum consciousness, a fundamental intelligence underlying everything, it makes you wonder, could this inherent goodness of existence be a reflection of that consciousness's own nature? Could the universe be a manifestation of a benevolent will?
It's a truly awe-inspiring thought, I have to say, but I gotta admit it's a bit of a leap for me. How can we go from these abstract ideas about quantum mechanics and consciousness to making claims about the, moral character of a potential creator?
It's a fair question, and Priest acknowledges that even if we entertain this possibility of quantum consciousness, even if we see it reflected in how the universe seems fine-tuned for life, we can't definitively say that it's inherently good in the moral sense we usually think about.
So Are we back to square one then? Is this whole discussion just a really interesting thought experiment with no real-world implications?
Not necessarily, no, because even if we can't definitively prove the moral character of this hypothetical quantum consciousness, the very fact that we're having this conversation, that we can see these potential connections between science and spirituality, it opens up some really profound possibilities.
It's like that feeling you get when you look up at a clear night sky and see just the vastness of the stars. It makes you question your place in the grand scheme of things.
Exactly. And what Priest's paper encourages us to consider is whether those questions about our place in the universe, about the meaning and purpose of our existence, might have very different answers than we once thought.
Answers that might be rooted not just in ancient scriptures or philosophical texts, but in the very laws of physics themselves.
Precisely. It's a reminder that the pursuit of scientific knowledge and the exploration of spiritual questions aren't mutually exclusive. In fact, they might be two sides of the same coin, both guiding us toward a deeper understanding of the universe and our place in it.
So, where does that leave us, our listener, who's journeyed with us through this incredible deep dive into the quantum realm and what it might mean for some of life's biggest questions?
I think it leaves us with a sense of wonder, a renewed appreciation for the mystery of it all. The universe is far stranger and more wondrous than we often give it credit for. And while we may never have all the answers, the very act of asking the questions, of daring to explore the unknown, that's what makes this journey so rewarding.
It reminds me of something Carl Sagan once said. Somewhere, something incredible is waiting to be known. And maybe, just maybe, that something incredible lies at the intersection of science, consciousness, and the very fabric of reality itself. Thanks for joining us on this mind-expanding deep dive. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and never stop searching for the incredible.